What's up, Docs and Duckettes? Trevor Thompson, the self-appointed Looney Tunes Critic here, and a little while back I sat down with the great Bob Bergen, voice of Porky, and we watched Bugs Bunny's Howl-O-Scream Spooktacular. And it was kind of a reaction video in a sense too, because Bob had never seen it. After we got done with the commentary, by the way, if you didn't see the commentary, click up there. You can watch it now. You have no excuses. Then come back here. We talked. I mean, he's very generous with his time and with his candor, and he knows a lot about the classic Looney Tunes characters, certainly more than he's required to. It is by no. Mel Blanc didn't know a lot of Looney Tunes history, and he was there for it. So right now, without any further ado, here is the extended conversation of that commentary with the great Bob Bergen. The Bugs Bunny, the musical Bye Bye Bunny, is it supposed to be like some new cartoons and some new animation together, or is it all?
I heard it's been shelved. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I was hired for it, and then it was shelved. So I have no idea if there are any plans to put it elsewhere. Lots of weird choices and decisions happening. I mean, with the Warner Discovery business model, I have no information other than I heard. You know as much as I do.
Yeah. I guess so because I mean I have to admit, I have to plead ignorance. I really didn't. I mean, I never get threatened or excuse me. I never get threatened whenever there's like a canceling or an upset about the characters. It's like, first of all, I have all the cartoons in multiple formats and everything I'm ever going to want. And also they're not, you got to move with the times. That's what Looney Tunes did in the old days.
Yeah, but see, you don't make a living at it. So those of us that actually work on it, we'll feel what was the cartoon or the movie? Was it Batgirl? It was filmed, it was done, it was ready to go, and then they shelved it. And then I heard HBO Max started pulling other older cartoons, and I just could never understand. Well, you've got a home for all of these cartoons, all this content for people to come to, and you might have people who will subscribe just because, oh, look, they've got dozens and thousands and millions of episodes of old stuff. Why ever take it off? I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't personally understand the business decision, but they don't ask us.
Yeah. You're not paid to think, Bergen.
Nope, I am paid to stutter.
So just watching that now, do you have any memories of the recording spring to mind? I know it's pretty insular, the fact that you've been in the same physical location for everything you've been recording.
I have none, and here's why. We'll record, sometimes 2 or 3 at a time.
Yeah.
And I record by myself. And to be 100% honest, I may not even understand what's happening in the story because it's literally just my character's dialogue.
Yeah.
The creatives, the producers, the director, they understand what's going down. And I might deliver a line. The line might be, it might say, in a hushed tone, he's right over there. And they're like, yeah, I know it says hushed, but give me one a little bit more volume. He's right over there. Not quite as panic. He's right over there. So you put all that together, and you do it so many different times, and you don't know what tape they're going to print. There's no way to remember. You know what? The one I do remember was Monkey Bird.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, well, it was our first.
Yeah.
And I just remember looking at that. They sent me the storyboard, and I was like, holy cow, they're doing a classic Looney Tune. And I kind of thought that when we did Carrot Blanca. I was like, man, this feels like a classic Looney Tune.
Yeah.
Porky was in Carrot Blanca originally. They cut him.
Oh, really? What did he do in that?
You see him walking across the restaurant, the cafe in one scene with a little fez. He was the Sidney Greenstreet character, and he had some dialogue, but it was a long. It sounds like a oxymoron. It was a long short, so they cut his dialogue.
too much stuttering, I guess. But yeah, so I do want to ask about that since you remember Curse of the Monkey Bird, because I mean, from my observation, it did seem like you gave kind of a more high energy performance than you had in previous iterations of Porky. Were you
I gave them what they were asking for. You know, you have to understand.
And you noticed it though, right?
I've had people complain to me, you know, I didn't like your performance in the Looney Tunes show. That really wasn't Porky. I was giving the director and the producers what they wanted for that version. Same with New Looney Tunes. Same with the first Space Jam. I mean, you know, we were being directed by Ivan Reitman, who had never done a Looney Tunes in his life.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would occasionally say, can I try one just for me? He was like, I think the only director I'd ever worked with who occasionally would say, no, we got what we wanted. I'm like, all right. So
Joe Pytka had moved on by the time.
Had nothing to do with the voices.
Yeah. Okay.
He directed the live action. And I met him at the premiere. And I was like, oh, yeah, I want to meet the on-camera director. And I went up to him and I said, Mr. Pick, I'm Bob Bergen. I did Porky and Tweety and Marvin the Martian and Space Jam. And he goes, what do you want, a medal? I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Have a great evening. I'll see you at the party.
I've heard many accounts that he's a douchebag, or was.
You know, his product is good. He was a huge commercial director. Did he do the Nike Air Jordan spots? Is that why he got the movie? Yes,
that's why he was given the job.
Well, there you go. I mean, those were.
He did do something. One of the things I'd ever seen that I was pretty impressed with before was that he did that Free as a Bird. Beatles. Remember the Beatles video in the early 90s?
Sure. Yeah.
He did that, and that's for 6 minutes.
No, I mean, I from what I understand, his work is stellar. Yeah. I just didn't find him to be warm and fuzzy.
No, he also didn't. He would tell you he didn't suffer fools, but if he was the fool and didn't see it, he didn't take that well either. There's a whole story about playing on the field with. On the green screen field with Bill Murray and Michael Jordan and everything, and there's all these guys dressed head to toe in green, and they're going to be the characters, and so he's choreographing this shot where like Bugs or one of them goes in front of him, in front of Jordan or in front of Bill Murray, and luckily one of the animators, a guy who'd worked on Roger Rabbit, a legend named Dave Spafford, luckily because he was a magician's assistant and could also do filmmaking kind of stuff. He was kind of like the Iwerks of his day in a weird way. He was on set and he saw this and he's like, whoa, hold on. You can't really have, if you want the characters to go in front of the live action performers, you can't have a guy in a green suit do that, because then. And Pitt was like, no, you don't understand. Those guys are invisible.
Well,
no.
I will tell you, we had a similar situation in the voiceover recording sessions. It was Dee Baker, Billy West, myself, Bill Farmer, and it was the locker room scene, and all the characters are talking at the same time, and I'm doing Porky and Tweety. And when I would do, my Tweety is sped up. My Porky isn't. Sometimes it is, but that's not my choice. I think my Porky sounds fine, not sped. But I said to Ivan, hey, and he was with us in the booth, in the room. I said, Ivan, how are you going to isolate all of our voices to speed Tweety up if we're all speaking on top of each other?
Right.
And Ivan goes, they know how to do that stuff in post-production. And the engineer pushes the talkback button, goes, no, we don't.
Yeah.
And so we had to go back and re-record a whole bunch of stuff. And Billy West turns to me, you idiot. You should have waited till we were done recording. We would have been paid to do it the whole thing again.
I love that you do a Billy West impression. That sounds like him.
Billy West, sort of is Larry Fine. I mean, that's really very much his natural voice, but Billy West's mind is unique to Billy West. He is just. I also do a pretty good Bill Farmer. I don't know if you ever seen Bill Farmer.
That's
talk.
Bill. Yeah, I've heard Bill.
I've done Bill for Bill, and Bill says, "Don't do that."
Maybe we'll cut this. Maybe this will be boring. I imagine everybody does a Porky for you. I'm not going to make you suffer through my Porky. Do you know anyone that does a Mel Blanc impression?
I've never heard anybody do. You mean just Mel's natural voice?
Yeah.
Never heard it. No, but that's a good question because here's why when people say, "Oh, you do a great Porky," "Oh my God, Billy West," "Oh my God, Bowser's Daffy," and I'm always the first one to say, we don't come close to Mel Blanc. None of us do. I mean, because there was so much Mel Blanc in those characters. I mean, Mr. Spacely on the Jetsons was Mel Blanc. Not quite as pissed off and southern as Yosemite Sam.
Right.
Sylvester was very close to Mel. But no, I've not heard anybody do, because Mel didn't do Mel that often.
Right.
And just, I mean, there were a couple. There was one, Porky was, I think, a talent agent, and this turtle comes in and says, "I'm known as the man of 1,000 voices." And that was pretty much Mel's, when the turtle just talked, pretty much Mel's real voice.
Yep. Yeah, I know that cartoon. So I'm going to do this for you now. This is from an interview that Mel did. This is the first time I ever saw Noel Blanc. This is for...
Is this That's My Line?
No, it's about that time, though. This was for a Roger Rabbit documentary.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
So here it goes. And you can be honest with me. I'll just cut it out. I'm just kidding.
Please show it.
So here it is. There's a lot of people that can claim to do the voice and all that other stuff, but there's only one guy that can do it properly, and that's my son Noel. Noel, you want to come up here and give me just a couple of lines?
Yeah, what's up, Doc? He's pretty close, don't you think? You looking for a rabbit? Yeah, I'm looking for a rabbit. That's nice.
Okay, get out of here.
Your Mel's pretty good.
Thank you. I wondered about that because it's like you say, there's so many voices that are just below the surface of his natural voice.
Yeah.
I would have thought more people had a Mel impression of just his voice.
Well, here's the thing with Mel. I mean, there were, I'm sure you know these, my generation, and there's a series of shorts that were leading up to Back in Action. Mm-hmm. That was the project that I quit and was fired on the same day.
Larry Doyle.
And the director's strategy, which if you think about it makes sense on paper, but it doesn't make sense in reality, was he took old Looney Tunes cartoons and slowed them down to Mel's real voice, and he asked me to mimic Mel and then speed me up. And his theory was, it'll sound more like Mel. And I said, here are the problems with that. Number one, you slowed the voice down too much. That's not Mel's real-time voice doing Porky. The reason I know that is because I have a whole bunch of old radio shows where Mel Blanc did, Private Sad Sack, which was really Porky Pig.
Yeah.
I said, that's your first problem. Your second problem is that they used RCA ribbon microphones and they were recorded in sound stages, which is why you hear a lot of room noise when Yosemite Sam yells. Mm-hmm. Number three, Mel Blanc smoked. And you can hear Smoker's voice in his voice. Put that all together, when you record me this way, I'm going to sound like Alvin the Chipmunk stuttering.
Yeah.
And that's why I quit. And I worked with them for like a month back and forth. And I never argue with directors. My job is to do what they want. I don't care. I have no ego. But I didn't like the way I was representing the character, and I didn't like the way I sounded. And frankly, was not crazy about the whole project. And I just thought, I don't want to do this. I have too much integrity for the characters. And they kind of sort of never saw the light of day. They're on YouTube, but they were going to release them theatrically. Mm-hmm. For like 10 months leading up to Back in Action. And I don't think they ever did. I don't think some made it past Animatic.
So it's just to be clear, they were trying to get you, they were basically trying to figure out the pitching percentages and then listen to old cartoons to figure out how Mel sounded, get you to do that.
Well, Mel wasn't even pitched. Mel was recorded slower.
Right.
And when they played it back in real time.
Pitched is a loose term now, yeah.
And by the way, I wish they would still do it that way today.
Yeah.
But the microphones are too sophisticated. The rooms are too sophisticated. The rawness of those old recordings are part of the recording charm. Chuck McKibben has a really great book on Mel Blanc. Chuck was his recordist for many, many years. And Mel Blanc's autobiography is kind of romanticized
Oh,
and it's
very
a
much.
little bit of urban legend at times.
Very
And
much so.
Chuck's is the truth. It's a really good book.
Oh, the story of how he created Porky's voice by
Even though he didn't.
even though Joe Doherty did it, and that he went to the pigs and listened to them, and then they said go home and take a bath. The whole story, yeah.
Yeah, I was at, I think it was La Jolla, and it was an evening with Mel Blanc, and my dad took me when I was a kid, and I was sitting behind Chuck Jones, and with every story Mel was saying, I heard Chuck under his voice going, "That's not true. That's not true. That's not true," and he's getting more and more angry. Especially the Ben Hardaway.
Yeah.
But why don't you call him Bugs Bunny when it was actually on a storyboard or a design sheet, and it was Bugs's bunny.
Yeah.
It was anyway.
Well, those stories continue because it's a time before the internet, so it's almost like a free for all. Because I have since interviewed. My favorite animator was Rod Scribner, and his son is now retired, and he was watching a bunch of my videos. He reached out to me, and then his daughter, who knew him, who was with him when he was at Warner Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to talk to them. Very, very different people. They got to see two very different sides of Rod. But one thing that they both mentioned, and the older one insisted, was that Rod Scribner created the Roadrunner and Coyote, because Rod Scribner used to say all the time that he wanted to do, because he had Roadrunners in his backyard. He lived up in the mountains, and he would go up and down the roads, and he would drive, and he would see them running alongside the road, and he would think these are perfect cartoon characters. And he allegedly said something to Mike Maltese, and the only part of this that I know to be true is that Chuck didn't like Rod Scribner. So story goes on their side of the family that as soon as Chuck Jones heard that it was Scribner's idea, he took it and was like, "I'm going to make it mine," and fuck him. And that was allegedly. And again, this is,
how do we know?
How do we know? It could be. They could have. I don't know. They could have an agenda. They could not. They seemed unassuming to me, but who knows?
Listen, I'll tell you a story. I was early on when I first started doing these characters. I was on Good Morning London or Good Morning England, or what's sort of like their version of Good Morning America.
Yeah.
With Friz Freeling.
Wow.
And I never met him. I take that back. I met him years earlier at Hanna-Barbera when he was auditioning for Pink Panther and Sons, which I didn't get, but I got to meet him at the auditions. And I was introduced to him. Friz, this is Bob Bergen. He's doing Porky Pig for us now. And Friz goes, and by the way, I've become friends with his daughter Hope, who is just delightful. Friz says to me, "We used to use a guy named Mel Blanc." And I said, "Oh, I know." And he goes, "Yeah, I didn't want him." I said, "You didn't want him?" He goes, "Oh, no. He was great. He was really, really good. But, we had him for Bugs, we had him for Porky, we had him for Daffy." And I was like, "I don't want to use him for everything, but Warner was too cheap to hire somebody else, so we had to use Blanc for everything." And I forget who said, "Friz, the show's live today. We're not going to say that on the air, okay?" He goes, "Say what?" So it was just a conversation with me. And I really don't think he had any animosity or ill will towards Mel Blanc.
Right.
But, it was the days of the contract players. And as you know, and I had this conversation with June a lot, there were nobody else getting screen credit. So, and then that did piss June off quite a bit.
And, she would have been, upset about what happened with Space Jam 2. There was, I don't know if you heard about it, but there was a number of artists that didn't get credit that worked on it from home, like you guys did, animators that worked from home. And by far one of the most popular is Dave Alvarez. He was a Looney Tunes comic book artist who now is working, doing, character art and stuff on all this stuff. And I interviewed him, and it was so weird because I remember saying to him, "Dude, it was one thing to watch the old cartoons and go, I know there's 3 animator names. I know there's more than 3 animators in this. But, time, space, all that other stuff. And I'm like, I know, like Roger Rabbit had one of the longest credit sequences in the world. There's no excuse nowadays to not credit somebody. It's absurd.
So I don't know how it works for everybody else. For actors, it has to be in your contract that you're going to get screen credit. It is the producer's discretion if it is not a clause that your agent negotiates in the contract. And I'll tell you, I was not invited to the original Space Jam premiere. I ended up going because Dee Baker, who was Daffy, his wife was nice enough to let me be his +1. But for the second one, I said to my agent, I want you to put in my contract that I get to go to the premiere. And she did. And then, COVID hit, and we didn't know there was going to be one. There was. So that was actually the first time I was out with people during COVID, was the premiere of Space Jam 2. But, I don't know what it's like for animators, for artists. I don't even know if they have a contract, to be honest with you. But
so why isn't it?
Those credits, they went forever and ever and ever. I can't imagine why they would leave somebody out. It doesn't cost them much, I think, to add a name, but that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I did an episode of reality TV, and I couldn't believe that. First of all, I was playing essentially a version of myself, and I wasn't even the Looney Tunes critic. I was less than nobody back then, and yet for some reason they were paying you a certain amount of money, and part of it was because you don't get to put it on a resume and you don't get to get credit for it. And I'm like, well, why is that? And they go, well, we want the illusion of reality to be like, we actually want people to think that, Mama June actually met you at the ice cream store and didn't see the giant cameras and lights that were everywhere and all that other stuff. And I'm just like, okay, fine. But then there was, like, in the shot, it has my name. They're like, and here she is with Trevor. And I'm like, well, what the?
Right.
What does this mean? What is the credit? I don't understand the credit thing ultimately, because it's like, why would there be a scenario where it would benefit someone else, not like a corporation, to not credit you?
But I got to tell you, as far as like an animator on an animated feature, an in-betweener, whatever their job was, it could have just been an oversight too. Who knows?
Yeah.
When they did the Flintstones movie, the rumor has it that they thought that Dino was a library, and they didn't know it was Mel Blanc.
Oh.
Now, did Mel ever get screen credit in the end of the original run of the Flintstones as the voice of Dino?
Don't know.
I don't either. So it might have just been an oversight.
I do know that the 90s movie with John Goodman and Rosie.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, he gets a voice credit in.
No, but originally he didn't.
Yeah. Oh, that was put
and
back
I believe it was Noel. This is what I just heard, because Mel Blanc's estate should have been paid for that. And listen, this is hearsay. I don't know if this is a fact, but what I heard was somebody in production thought it was just a library sound effect. And there were so many original Flintstones sound effects and whatnot that they used that were library. They thought Dino was too. Well, no, Dino was Mel Blanc. So they gave him screen credit and they had to pay. And when something like that happens, boy, the estate or the actor, if they're still around, has the leverage in the negotiation if they want to use them.
And it certainly wouldn't be the first time that Mel Blanc was part of if not all of a library. Because I don't know that he ever got credit for Woody Woodpecker, but he only did the first 2 cartoons.
Right. And
then he was contracted to Schlesinger's. But for decades after that, Lance and Universal used the laughs. They put them into the library. They had the voice actor that did Woody after Mel left. They never laughed. They used Mel's stock laugh. And also, before he was hired at Warner Brothers, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, when he was auditioning to Treg Brown. That story is actually, there's a lot of truth to that, because he kept auditioning, Mel kept auditioning, and the guy died, and then it was Treg Brown, and Treg Brown was like, okay. But before he got hired, he had a bunch of drunken bull noises and a few other things, and that got put into the rotating library that Treg used before Mel was hired.
And he used that laugh for Porky's Hare Hunt.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And it was a little bit more up here, with a little bit different voice, but it was the exact same laugh that he had done as a kid in school in an echoey hallway. At least that's the story he told.
Yeah.
And I don't think they changed Woody's laugh until Gracie Lance started doing it.
Oh shit, that's right. She did. But I mean, did you know that she did the laugh specifically? Like, I don't know.
Once she got hired to do Woody, she redid the laugh completely. She even it was Mel Blanc, with Guess Who. And then when she got hired, she did Guess Who and did the laugh at the top. And they used that specific take through the entire theatrical run until the 70s when Universal shut down their animation department.
He's such a raw talent. I mean, I don't know that we could ever really explain it to modern audiences, the level of, raw versus, exacting, like, didn't he have perfect pitch?
From what I understand, yeah. And amazing vocal cords. Yeah.
Caruso's vocal cords.
That's what I hear, yeah.
But
I wouldn't know how to compare that, or I don't know how many doctors have seen Caruso to go, yeah, they're identical. But it makes a romantic story.
The more palpable one is when you watch him with Jack Benny, and they're going back and forth. My father idolized Jack Benny. My dad's English, so that to him that was like the epitome of American comedy. Yeah. And Jack Benny was so. My dad said to me, he was like, the thing about Benny was that he could do laconic, he could do deadpan, and he never broke. And the only person who ever broke him up was Mel.
Yeah.
You see it all the time, and it's because if Mel's, sobbing and feeling suicidal, he doesn't do a hokey, like, he really, gives it 100% in a scenario where you wouldn't be doing this. And that's what's funny about it. He commits,
He was I think that there were other voice actors that were more vocally versatile. That's my personal opinion. I think Dawes was more vocally versatile. I think Paul Frees was more vocally versatile. But I think Blanc was the best actor because the characters, what he created as a storyteller, the personalities, let's be honest, Daffy and Sylvester, the same voice, but Daffy sped up. Even their personalities are kind of similar at times. But boy, if you really pay attention, they're different, completely different, solid characters.
Have you ever seen, there's a video I did where I took the scene from Scarlet Pumpernickel where Daffy and Sylvester talk to each other. And I did two versions. I did one where I brought Daffy down and left Sylvester so that you could hear two different Mels, normal Mels, and then I sped Sylvester up talking to normal Daffy, and both times you're just like, the tone is the same, but that is not the same character at all.
Yeah,
at all.
Yeah, exactly. And towards the end of Mel's life, when he was still recording, and you could just hear him struggle, to get that same sound, and I don't think it had to do with his accent. I think it had to do with his age. But when I remember watching him. So I didn't know these characters were sped up until I watched Mel Blanc work live.
Yeah.
And I crashed a recording session when I was a kid, and he was doing Tweety, and I thought, oh my God, he's really lost it. And they played it back, and it was pretty good.
Yep.
And I said to the producer, what did you do in the playback to make it sound better? And she said, we sped his voice up. I said, oh, because of the smoking and the age. And she said, no, that's how we've always recorded his voices. I said, since when? She said, well, since he first did Porky after the guy who really stuttered. And they sped his voice up, Joe Doherty, they sped his voice up because the cartoons were coming in too long. And when they brought in Mel, they thought, well, for some consistency, let's speed up Mel's voice. And they did that with Daffy. And they did that with Tweety, and they did that with Henry Hawk, and they did that with Sylvester Jr. They didn't do it with Yosemite Sam. They didn't do it with Foghorn Leghorn.
Or Bugs.
But that was a technique, that recording slower, playing it back so it sounds faster. That for some reason, the way he was built, the way his vocal cords were, He never sounded obviously adjusted. It sounded very organic.
Yeah. And what's interesting, you may not know this story, because I'm the one who got it out there, actually, and I'd never heard this for many years. That same guy I told you about, who had the green screen issue with Pitka, he when he was animating on Roger Rabbit, he animated the scene with Donald and Daffy in the ink and paint scene, and if you compare how Daffy sounds in that versus how Daffy was sounding in 1988 for other stuff that Mel was doing, it's completely different. And the reason for that is because, again, Spafford was an old school wizard. He knew the difference, like what you were saying about the difference between pitching and speeding up the old fashioned way. And so he said to Zemeckis, can I be there for the record when you record Mel? And they let him. And so what you're hearing is Mel doing it the old way, where he's not just doing the lisping, and he's actually doing. If you hear the last time I work at the, it comes out. He doesn't record it. This is the last time he records it. This is the last time he actually does a more stilted version of it, and they pitched it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah,
and it's so weird that like you can the pitching. It seems formulaic, but like you said with that project with you and I think it was Larry Doyle, I don't remember, but that project that you walked away from, it seems like it should work, but something about the voice, it's so intrinsic.
It doesn't, because again, all starts with him. Yeah. I know that in Roger Rabbit, his Tweety and his Bugs were fantastic for the same reason, probably because of a genius in post-production who knew how to make it sound like classic.
And also was there to coach him, saying that.
Yeah, I know that Joe Alasky did Yosemite Sam in Roger Rabbit, and from what I heard was that kind of broke Mel's heart, but he just didn't have the oomph. He didn't have the energy. I will tell you that there was a conversation with me, and I hadn't done Porky professionally at all, to do Porky at the end of Roger Rabbit. And they had me record, just that last scene.
Go on, Daisy. Nothing left to see. That's all, folks. Hey, I like the sound of that.
Right.
And I it wasn't an official audition. It wasn't an official anything. They kind of didn't even tell me what it was for. They just had me in. And from what I heard, that Mel put his foot down. He goes, "Look, you're not using me for Sam. If you don't use me for Porky, I don't want you using me for any of the other characters too." So they used him for Porky, and he sounded great. He sounded fantastic.
I will say, I don't know if what you're saying is true about Sam. It probably is, but what I heard again from either Spafford or someone else was that. They did bring Mel in, and indeed, it was apparent that he couldn't do Sam anymore. And they were the story I heard was they were very polite to him and said, "Okay, thank you. This is great." And no one said to him directly, "We're not going to use this. This isn't working." It was kind of everyone was looking at each other quietly in the room. It's like no one wants to tell a legend that he can't voice Yosemite Sam.
Yeah.
So, and the heartbreaking part of the story, of this version of the story, is that he heard Alasky, and when he watched it and said, "Wow, they did great with what I gave them." He didn't know it was Alasky.
He didn't stay for the credits then. But
right.
I can tell you a similar story with there was a Geico commercial, Rocky and Bullwinkle, and from what I understand, they brought June in to record, and they replaced her, but they didn't. And they replaced her with a friend of mine, and they asked my friend. Her name is Lori Frazier, and she's done it quite a bit. But they said, "Look, keep your mouth shut. We're not going to tell anybody." And June called me when the commercial aired. She goes, "I don't know why people are saying that I'm getting too old. I think I sound great." And I was like, "You do, Junie. You do." I don't know if they might have even paid her residuals. I don't know for sure, But and June was a stickler for money. She knew every dime that was owed to her and what she made on everything. So it would surprise me that she didn't see any residuals because it was airing like crazy. Didn't make a phone call to her agent, Don Pitts, and say, "Where's my money?" So they might have actually paid her residuals as well.
And Pitts was Mel Blanc's agent too, wasn't he?
He was my agent.
Yours?
He was my first agent. Yeah, he was everybody's first agent. Mel Blanc inherited him. Mel Blanc was with Wormser, Joseph, and Helfand, and Don Pitts moved over there, and it became Don Pitts Voices. Don was an amazing dude, an amazing He oh gosh, at some point in everybody's career back in the 70s and 80s, he represented them.
All right, I'm going to wrap this up with a softball question.
Oh, a softball question.
Yeah,
okay.
A real softball, because we've been hitting hard for the fences.
Oh, yeah.
So
right.
It's a Halloween special. Do you have a Halloween costume this year?
No, but here's what we do for Halloween. We've got one of those neighborhoods where there's billions and billions of kids. Mm-hmm. So I love passing out candy. And then 2 doors down, our neighbor stands there while he's passing out candy and pours wine for all the neighbors. So I'll go wine tasting. I'll be doing some cigar smoking, and so no, I do not dress up. I will tell you this though, but every once in a while on the door you'll hear Porky Pig, trick or treat. So they kind of know Porky Pig lives in this house.
Yeah, well, I mean, word travels fast in any neighborhood, at least of all L.A.
Yeah, right.
Industry town. Well, Bob, thank you so much for sitting in with us, and
you bet, it was fun. And thank you for showing me the cartoon. I like you said, I'd never seen it.
Yeah, well, there's 2 ways to see it, and I figure the best way is both ways is with me.
There you go.
That's all, folks.
That's my line.
Well, Docs and Docettes, that's going to do it for this video. I want to give another thank you to my special guest, the lovely and talented and generous with his time, Bob Bergen. And if you guys like this kind of thing, be sure to give a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. We also have a Patreon. There's a link here too. And we also have other videos, and I'm sure you see them right now on your screen. So do yourself and us a favor and click on one of those and subscribe and all that, because it really does help the channel. Thanks.